Good morning. I'd like to take a moment to welcome everybody to our webinar today on managing unhelpful thoughts and improving mental health. My name is Sean Campbell, and today is March 8th. The time is our 2022, and the time is 10 a.m. We're going to start the webinar. During this webinar, you're going to notice that your chat feature has been disabled and that we are recording. Because where we are recording, your consent to be recorded is considered by you continuing on this webinar, and the chat feature has been disabled as well as your cameras, so that way we can kind of improve the bandwidth. You'll notice that my teammate will be putting information into the chat box, so that way you can go back and reference the information and the links and PDFs that we're providing. If you have questions and answers, we ask you to drive those towards the question and answer box, and you can ask some of those questions anonymously if you like. We do ask that you keep those questions respectful during the time of this webinar. Again, my name is Sean Campbell, and I spent 7 years as a Greenside sailor providing medical services and medical care for the Navy Marine Corps team. As an honorable shellback, I got my chance to see the world and meet new and incredibly exciting people all over the place. Had a chance to finish college and live up to all the Navy's promises that they had for me, and it was a good time. So let's talk a little bit about CalTAP and what CalTAP is. CalTAP is the California Transition Assistance Program. It's designed to inform and connect veterans of all areas of their earned benefits, both federal and state, as well as provide that continued support and assistance, because we recognize your needs change over time. And we've kind of identified 5 different pathways, and those pathways are core curriculum, education, entrepreneurship, and service providers. You will see when we have a variety of webinars that we have out there for you. And as you attend these webinars, we do ask that when we're contacting you or you're contacting us, that you provide a non-DoD email address, and that we ask you to take time to really fill out our surveys, because it does help us engineer more of the type of webinars that you're asking for. Also, when you're registering, we want you to use a non-DoD email address, because registration actually enables many things. It lets you get electronic delivery of our monthly newsletter, which explores a lot of different topics that are important to you. Registration unlocks customized benefits, and it gives you directed support, so that way it empowers us to walk with you as you're going through those different moments that matter. This is a snapshot of our webpage, and when you land here, if you look at the bottom, you can see that it actually provides you that ability to go to some of the previous webinars, and it talks about the 5 pathways, as I said before. This is 24/7 access to self-paced learning modules, and there's also videos, PDFs, and it just allows you to explore a variety of benefits that you have at your convenience and the pace that works best for you. The education pathway talks about the different educational benefits out there. Employment pathway talks about different employment and how to best obtain employment. Entrepreneurship, if your dream is to start your own business and you want to market yourself, and then the variety of different service providers that are out there to assist veterans, service members, and their families. So it's just a lot of great information that you can do at your pace. California specific benefits. There are a lot of benefits that the state of California offers veterans and their families. The dependent college tuition fee waiver for disabled veterans, veteran designation on your driver's license. It allows you to unlock a lot of benefits you might not be aware of by having that designation on your driver's license. The Department of Motor Vehicles also has a registration fee waiver program for disabled veterans who have a mobility disability linked directly to their service. California offers reduced hunting and fishing licenses for disabled vets. There's no cost state passes for under certain circumstances. And then a lot of times there's eligibility for property tax and business tax, either reduced fees or exemptions. Because there's so many counties, there's 58 counties in California, we ask that you explore those at the county assessor's website, so that way you can drive that information towards where you need it. And then if you look on the right hand side of the page, you'll see that CalVet actually operates a large number of divisions. So there's organizations within our organization designed to help you out, whether it be you're looking for the home loan, the CalVet home loans. It's the farm and home loans division, where it allows you to maximize your purchasing power by adding your VA loan to actual loan from the state of California. The women's and minority divisions, they are forefront in advocacy, support, and outreach for those underserved groups. The homes for long-term care provide dignity and healthcare as we all enter that moment of aging. And then for those heroes that are entering internment, Calvet also offers cemeteries that are different from the actual VA cemeteries, because these are state cemeteries. The Veteran Resource Book, this will really go into detail about that bucket of benefits that the state of California has for you as a veteran, for service members, and for their families. Great deal of information there. My teammate is going to drop a link for the PDF in the chat. And of course, the world famous va.gov. This is one of the best websites to help you manage your healthcare, your benefits, view claims, your transfer entitlements. It's for service members, it's for families, it's for veterans. So this is just a great tool that you can use to manage a lot of your affairs with the government. This is my direct contact information. And on the right-hand side, you can see links to our YouTube page, our LinkedIn page, Facebook. We really appreciate the fact that you're here today to get this information. And we just want to remind you that there's a whole division in the state of California that's out there to support and help you out. Next up is going to be Lance, who is the local interagency network coordinator. Good morning, Lance. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. It's good to see you again. You're looking great.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. Yes, so I am the local interagency network coordinator for CalVet down here in the San Diego region. And on the next map, you'll see my counterparts. This is the entire map of California. We have 8 links. So 8 of us that have these regions. And really today is just kind of to understand what the link does, what their role is in the community that you may live in, and how to get a hold of them. So no matter where you are in California, you always have a CalVet representative in a link. And, you know, really our goal is to get to know that local region and connect you with benefits at the local level, as well as help you with state and federal stuff as well. But you can see the regions aren't necessarily equal in size. This is the FEMA disaster relief regions, actually, that's broken up into roughly by population, and veteran population follows that. So wherever you are in California, I would suggest writing down that email. A link is a great person to have kind of in your contact list. If you have any questions about that you're not getting answered about the VA or about California benefits or about any local benefits or nonprofits or things that might be available to you, great opportunity to ask your link and see if they can't get you connected with those benefits. So next slide is going to talk a little bit more about what we do, but we provide a lot of outreach to service members, families, veterans and their families. And this is starting to be back in person, which is really nice. We're starting to move forward again. Before the pandemic, we were just always at the military bases. We were at the veteran events in the community. We were going to the public libraries. We have Vet Connects at the libraries, and going to all the community colleges, UCs and CSUs, where there are veteran resource centers, and just providing help and assistance any way we can. Our main role really is making referrals. So we aren't able to do claims and process different paperwork and stuff like that, but we can get you to the right people. So we really make a lot of referrals. Our job is to really understand the local landscape and the veteran communities within our regions, and establish these networks with everyone so we can quickly get you to whatever help or whatever assistance you might need. We also assist with local emergencies. So anytime there's the huge fires or flooding, when there is a local assistance center that is set up in California, a link will usually be there manning a booth. CalVet has a home loan program that's separate from the VA their home loan program. And so if you had a house with CalVet and it was lost in a fire or flood, we can help you with the CalVet insurance and getting everything taken care of And so, we're there to assist and get you to the right people no matter what happens. And then we also provide leadership and advocacy to the local communities. This looks a little bit different down in San Diego just because we have so many veterans and we have the most active duty military in the entire world here with 8 military installations down here. So the leadership and advocacy is really done even in the community. A lot of the board of supervisors, I think 2 or 3 of them are veterans themselves. So it looks different, but up in the north, you saw that huge area that Cole oversees. It's really rural. There's a lot of things that just aren't established yet and stuff. And so that's really where that leadership and advocacy kind of, fits in there. Next slide, you'll see this is just kind of going back over what I said, but if you ever have issues getting a hold of EDD, again, the links aren't able to like access the records and everything. EDD isn't a part of even California or Calvet, but we have relationships with their veteran representatives. And so if you're sitting on hold for a really long time, not able to figure out what's going on, give your link an email or call, and they'll be able to maybe get you kind of a side door number, a number that's going to be easier to access somebody. And that also goes for the VA medical and benefits. So a lot of us have relationships with the directors in our regions. There's been cases where someone is not getting a response or not getting called back or able to set up a appointment or something like that. And the link can really, at the state level, try and help you get connected with someone that can actually get you some answers and get you some help and get you through stuff. Same goes for the county veteran service offices. We work very closely with them. So if you're having issues with some benefits there or getting an appointment in a timely manner, let us know and we can try and help you get into the CVSO. Next slide. I guess that's pretty much it for me. So this is my contact information. Again, if you don't live in my region, that's fine. You can reach out to me with any questions and I can definitely get you hooked up with the link in your region. But I hope that you learned something you didn't know about, the 8 of us that are out here, able to help you in any way we can. So I hope you guys have a great day and enjoy the rest of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Lance. It's good to see you again. And next coming up is going to be Julie, who works with US Vets Outside the Wire. Good morning, Julie. How are you today?
Good morning, everyone. So happy to be here. I'm really excited to be a part of this presentation today. So I'll take it from here. So once again, good morning, everyone. I'm so excited. US Vets Outside the Wire program, we love partnering with CalVets to hopefully be of service to those who have served. Quickly, before I get into the presentation, I just want to introduce myself a little bit and the program that I work for. So US Vets is the largest nonprofit that serves veterans in the United States. So outside of the VA, we are here to help you, multiple states, multiple programs, residential, career, and mental health. The Outside the Wire program specifically, we often partner with a lot of different community colleges to help student veterans, but we broadened our scope to really try to help all veterans. And this presentation is a part of that. So my name is Julie Thornberry. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor. I'm also a clinical supervisor. So I not only do therapy, but I train upcoming therapists to work with veterans. So this presentation, I developed because I think it's just a really great introduction to how our thoughts can impact our mental health, can impact our feelings, can impact a lot of things. And so being able to have awareness and some basic understanding about these thoughts and how to react and handle them can really be a wonderful tool just for anybody as they navigate trying to reach their goals and deal with stressors, or people dealing with more significant mental health. It is a lot of evidence to show that it can help. So with that, let's just jump into the presentation. Next slide. So as I mentioned very briefly, the objective today is just an introduction, trying to understand how thoughts, which sometimes can be very automatic, meaning they just pop in there, right? How they can impact our feelings, our mood, our self-esteem, and what we do, what we don't do. It's all linked. And learning a little bit more how these thoughts can impact our mood, how they can actually even develop our brain and pathways in our brain, and a host of things that can come along with that. And I'm going to focus specifically on 5 really common unhelpful thinking styles. You know, there are more, but I thought these 5 are pretty general. I think most of us have experienced this, had these thoughts. So, you know, it's very common to have all sorts of thoughts. It's not necessarily problematic. And we might not even be really aware of it. So a part of this is just starting to open our mind and becoming aware, because awareness and insight can have a big impact on then what we do and how we approach and reframe things. So I'm going to give some specific examples that you might even be familiar with for yourself. And just some really starting introduction to what to do once we notice a pattern of these type of unhelpful thinking styles. What can we do with them? Now, obviously, we have limitations in our scope, but we can at least start to get some ideas of how we can balance and even challenge them so we can have a much more, helpful, balanced approach to our thoughts and how we approach stressors and difficult things in life. So with that, let's move along. Next slide. So this is just a visual representation of what they call the cognitive triangle. And that's just a fancy term to just show how thoughts, feelings, and behaviors all tie together. Of course, they all influence each other, but for our purposes, we're really starting with the thoughts. So a thought that we may have, a thought that might quite automatically pop in our brain, or something we're just choosing to focus on, how does that then impact how we feel and then what we do? So this is an example. So if a thought would pop in your brain, nothing I do matters, or I don't ever do anything right, or I mess up everything. Well, then that thought, when it pops in there, if it goes unnoticed and unchallenged, it's accepted as a fact. It's accepted as truth. And so a feeling comes from it, and that could be hopelessness, despair, sadness, maybe just feeling down on yourself. Well, then if you're feeling hopeless and down on yourself and it doesn't matter, well, you might not start a project. You might not go to work. You might not make that extra effort to do something you really want to do. And so you get blocked, which then, of course, is not going to help the thoughts or the feelings. So they kind of start to loop around. And before you know it, you can take an already stressful situation and make it worse quite innocently, or start to feel yourself getting really down on yourself and really blocked and feeling stuck because, your thinking and your worldview just is kind of in this circular motion. But I really wanted to take this opportunity before we get further into the presentation to tell you what this presentation is not about. I mean, this isn't about saying that if you feel down or you feel anxious and you're having a hard time, that it's all in your head, that it's not real. That is not what this is about. I mean, difficult things happen. We have complicated feelings. It's a part of living. Being able to have uncomfortable feelings, feeling sad, being upset, being disappointed, being scared. It's a part of being a human. There's nothing wrong with that. We're not trying to talk you out of your feelings. We're not trying to make you feel like it's all in your head. This isn't about blaming you and what you're thinking or feeling bad what you're thinking. This is just one approach and one tool that can give you a little bit more empowerment in your life to not to just be stuck, or to have a tool to be able to reframe and look at things from maybe a little bit of a different perspective that can not only make you feel better, maybe not feel as hopeless, maybe take actions to get you towards things you want to do, but it might also just in general start to rewire your brain so the pathways aren't getting so set in this negativity, and be able to create new pathways which actually can rewire your brain over time. So it's a really powerful evidence-based type of practice. So let's move along, please. So this slide goes a little bit more in depth of how automatic, how these thoughts can impact our mental health and behavior. And there's actually a lot of evidence and research behind this. You know, in the psychology field, cognitive behavioral psychology, if you've ever heard of it, it really focuses on this. And there's a ton of evidence behind it, not only of this approach being helpful, but also of how a tendency or a bias towards negative, unhelpful thoughts, when unchecked, or especially when they get extreme, how they can actually result in a lot of mental health issues. So, you know, in short, you know, our minds are always interpreting the world, right? They're always working. It's this wonderful machine. It's going all the time, even when we're sleeping. There's so much that it's doing for us that we don't have to stop and think about, you know, and we've all learned, and I'm sure you as veterans, the more we practice and we drill things, the more in a moment of crisis or decision, we can just act almost on automatically. You know, so the more we do things, the more we focus on things, it wires our brains. And our brains, of course, are always looking for shortcuts to be efficient. And that could be labels, that could be categorizing things, that could be figuring out shortcuts. So it's a wonderful, our brain is a powerful, powerful thing. But sometimes it can quite innocently start to create automatic thoughts that pop in our brain that are biased, that are shortcuts. But if they're negative, if they're biased to the negative or the most catastrophic, that can actually start to lower our mood, raise our anxiety, lower our self-esteem, block us from moving through towards our goals, impacting our relationships, honestly, just impacting our worldview, our reality. So it's very powerful. And of course, we can never possibly monitor our thoughts all the time or even control what might pop in there. But once we start to open and get more awareness, especially maybe when we're anxious or down on ourselves or depressed or stuck, if we start to be aware of what we're thinking, of what we're imagining, it can start to give us more of an ability to actually step back and be aware of those thoughts and wonder or challenge or explore if they're true, if they're helpful, if there's another way to view it. And just that act can start to rewire your brain and give you a different perspective, which ultimately over time can be incredibly helpful. And there's a lot of research, as I've said. Distorted and unhelpful thinking has been found to be associated with all types of mental health issues, depression, anxiety, OCD, eating disorders, and the list goes on. But you don't have to have significant diagnoses to find this helpful. You know, all of us could use aspects of this to improve our life and to be more empowered and to have a more balanced, helpful approach to handling things. And so with cognitive therapy, that proposes that thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are interrelated and that changing unhelpful thinking can lead to changes in our feelings and our behavior. So as we move forward, I want you to just start to kind of be aware over time, even after this presentation, of how you're thinking. And if you notice a lot of repetitive negative thinking when you're not feeling great, and then maybe you have a tool that you can start to kind of navigate and balance that. So next slide, please. So in this section, we're going to go more in detail about 5 really common unhelpful thinking styles. So they're going to be mental filtering, jumping to conclusions, black and white thinking, overgeneralizing, and labeling. And I don't know about you, but as I started to look through these, I've definitely recognized times that I've encountered them. And I know with my clients, it comes up a lot. So you may recognize some of this, and don't worry, it's pretty common. But once you start to get this tool and you start recognizing things, I think it's going to open up a whole new pathway in your brain. So next slide, please. See here, I like to include the visuals, especially for us visual learners. You know, what is mental filtering? So this is the tendency to focus on negative events while neglecting the positive. So you just think of filtering things through. When you filter things through, what are we looking at? What are we noticing? What are we focusing on? Where is our brain going? And this, once again, can happen quite unconsciously and automatically. So next slide, please. So once again, mental filtering is noticing our failures, but not seeing or noticing our successes. It gets out of balance. So we're filtering, or our brain is filtering a little bit more to the bias of the negative. So some examples might be only paying attention to negative feedback from a teacher or a supervisor and ignoring the positive. I mean, we can all have experiences like this. Of course, we're going to zero in on the thing we get wrong, or the negative feedback, or the one person that didn't like something. And we're going to focus on that. And sometimes when it's not done to extreme, you know, getting feedback and being able to improve is a part of learning. But if we're just disproportionately focusing on what we get wrong, or where we've perceived we've failed, and we don't see our successes, we don't see the things we get right, or the positive feedback, then suddenly our worldview is, of course, going to be much more negative, and we're going to be much more down on ourselves. And we might really miss out on a lot of opportunity to see it in a more balanced way, which is going to feel more helpful for us. So some more examples. I know with remote learning and work, you know, a lot of it has been negative. Sometimes there are also benefits of it, you know, and if we don't ever step back and see that balance, we can get very negative. Dwelling and focusing on failures and setbacks and challenges, and then ignoring or forgetting our successes and our achievements. I mean, how many of us are so hard on ourselves, you know, and we just don't give ourselves credit. And when that happens too much, we can really start to have a reality that we're failures, and that we mess up everything, and that nothing goes right, which of course isn't going to make us feel good. It's not going to encourage us to, you know, move forward and be confident. And when it's not necessarily true, or it's out of balance, then that's really a shame, because, you know, we're missing out on a lot. So once again, it's just fixating on our weaknesses and ignoring our strengths. So I don't know about you, but, you know, I've noticed this happening at times. And, you know, when this gets too much, you'll start to see yourself feeling very down on yourself. Or no matter what you do, it's not quite good enough. It's maybe even like a type of perfectionism, which of course, you know, is really not realistic. So next slide, please. Now I'm going into jumping to conclusions. So this is just sort of jumping to a conclusion of what is going to happen, or what someone might be thinking. It's really kind of a form of guessing, but when it happens a lot on the negative, these guesses start to feel like reality to us, not what might happen, but what is happening or what will happen. And when it tends to be negative, it's very unhelpful. So the tendency to make irrational assumptions about people and circumstances. So next slide, please. Jumping to conclusions, you know, two really common ways that come up with unhelpful thinking style are mind reading and fortune telling. So these are really common, and I think they're helpful to kind of give some examples of an unhelpful thinking style of jumping to conclusions. So mind reading is imagining or guessing we know what others are thinking or feeling. And this comes up a lot in relationships, but it can happen in the workplace. It can happen anywhere. You know, say, for example, if your wife or your husband in the morning is extra silent and they're not really talking to you a lot, you might imagine that they're upset at you. You might take it personally. You might start to worry, you know, but we don't really know. I mean, they may be upset at us. They may be not, you know, they might just be worried about something at work or stressed about something else, or just really tired. But when we jump to the conclusion that they're upset at us and we start to worry, well, next thing you know, we might feel bad about ourselves or worry about it. We might pick a fight or challenge them that could become an argument. You know, so really the only way we can really know what someone's thinking or feeling is to ask them, and if they're willing to tell us. You know, so guessing, we may be right, we may be wrong, but when this becomes a tendency of jumping to conclusions about what others are thinking and feeling, and it tends to be negative or tends to be self-critical, well, then this could really set up a lot of issues and a lot of stressors. So, you know, some ways to challenge that, right? So what if I'm wrong? I mean, is it possible that this has nothing to do with me? I mean, is there a possibility that they're not upset? Could I be wrong? You know, maybe I should ask. Has there ever been a time when I thought I knew what someone was thinking or feeling and later found out I totally misread it? or I just got it completely wrong and I went through a lot of stuff and worry over nothing. What evidence do you actually have other than a guess? Now, it's not to say sometimes we won't have a gut instinct of what someone's thinking or feeling, but we can't really know 100% until they tell us. So it's not really helpful to repeatedly jump to that conclusion when it's negative. And another really common jumping to conclusions type of thinking, unhelpful thinking, is fortune telling. So this is predictive thinking or guessing about what will happen in the future in a negative way, catastrophic, having a catastrophic view of what's going to happen, the what ifs, so I know with a lot of people who deal with anxiety or stressors, their brain kind of goes to the worst case scenario. What if? And it's always followed by something bad when there's a lot of anxiety. Now, once again, this isn't saying that we shouldn't look to the future and think about consequences or prepare about negative things or just stick our head in the sand and assume everything's going to be okay. We're once again looking for balance. What if maybe something bad will happen? Well, you can actually think, well, what if it doesn't happen? What if something good happens? Why should I just jump to the conclusion it's going to be horrible or catastrophic or a failure? Because if we keep just predicting that's going to happen, then our body and our feelings believe it is going to be bad. It is preparing ourselves, and it can even really make us really anxious when it isn't necessarily going to work out that way. When maybe it might actually go well. And so when this happens too much, you'll start to find a lot of stress and anxiety over and above the kind of regular amount we might normally face in a situation. So once again, we don't know until it happens. We're just guessing. So unless you have that magic ball that you see, the fortune teller looks in and you see what's going to happen, then all of us are really kind of just guessing. And so why disproportionately guess to the worst case scenario? So some ways to balance or challenge this is just to step back and think a little bit like, well, what if I'm wrong? I mean, what if something good goes well? What if it actually goes great? What if I'm just imagining this stressful thing, but maybe it won't? What evidence do we have that this is going to happen? Have we ever been wrong about guesses or predictions in the past? How many times have you been like, oh my gosh, it's going to be horrible. It's going to be horrible. And then you did go, wow, that actually wasn't that bad. Or I even kind of liked that. Or their reaction wasn't anything what I expected. And we realize sometimes these guesses are wrong. And if they go unchallenged and if they go unchecked, they can really stir up a lot of unhelpful feelings, and they can get in the way of doing things we want to do in our life. And they can even cause a lot of problems in relationships. Next slide, please. The next unhelpful thinking style is black and white thinking. So this is just the tendency to see things as all or nothing, black or white. They're either good or bad, or right or wrong. This is the two extremes of the spectrum. There's no compromise, there's no exceptions, there's no gray area. And while there might be certain things in life that are black and white, if we disproportionately view things in life this way, in a negative way, it can be unhelpful. So next slide, please. So once again, black and white thinking is just simply all or nothing. Involves only seeing one extreme or the other. You're either right, or totally wrong. You're either good and you've done everything good, or you're bad. There's no exceptions. So some examples might be, if I'm not perfect, then I've failed. If I don't do it perfectly, then I've messed up. And then I've messed up and I've failed. Well, none of us can be perfect. Perfection is something we can aim for, but it's not realistic. So falling below that, not doing something perfectly, making mistakes, doesn't mean all is lost. It doesn't mean that you have then failed. I either do it perfectly or not at all. The perfectionist amongst us can get really blocked because we can't move forward because we're trying to make it perfect, and it almost freezes us. Allowing ourselves to flow and not be perfect and be so hard on ourselves can really kind of open up not feeling as blocked and not feeling as bad. You either support me or you're against me. You either agree with me or you're against me. We're not always going to agree. People aren't always going to support everything that we do, but it doesn't necessarily mean we don't have common ground. It doesn't mean that someone's against you or against everything about you, or that if you don't agree with something they're doing, that you have to be against everything that they do. Finding the middle ground in relationships and in our thoughts can be incredibly helpful. And of course, you love me or you hate me. I either achieve all of my goals the way I'm planning, or I've messed up, and what's the point? So we're once again seeking balance. We're stepping out and weighing both sides, just trying to be a little bit more objective rather than just accepting these thoughts as facts, repeating them to ourselves, fixating on them, and then just getting extra bent out of shape about everything. We're just looking for balance, not all good, not all bad, just balance. So can you think of exceptions? Is perfection even realistic? What is the compromise? What is the gray area? The more we can try to find balance in our thoughts and with ourselves and our own self-thinking and self-thoughts and self-talk, but also in relationships, interpersonal relationships, and then just society in general. Next slide, please. And here we get to overgeneralizing. So the tendency to make broad generalizations based upon a single event or minimal to no evidence. So something happens and we generalize it to everything. Next slide, please. So with overgeneralizing, we're seeing a pattern based on a single event or being overly broad in the conclusions we draw. And I really want to focus on language with this one, because I think a lot of us do this. When you start to get the always, never, nothing, no one, everything, they're very extreme thoughts, they're very extreme language. And we all use this to some degree. This isn't about nitpicking your language or feeling bad about everything that pops in your brain. It's just becoming aware of a pattern that may not be helpful. So some examples might be, I always mess things up. It can't just be, I messed that up. I occasionally mess up. It suddenly becomes you mess one thing up and now you're generalizing that you mess everything up. Nothing ever works out for me. Something is blocked, something doesn't work. It's okay to feel bad about that. It's okay to be angry or upset. You're not talking yourself out of your legitimate feelings. But if you suddenly start to generalize that nothing works out for you, nothing will ever work out for you, then it can start to really trigger another layer of stress and low self-esteem or low mood that is not helpful, and that can even be very distorted. I always fail at everything. Everyone understands this but me. Everyone else is happy in relationships but me. No one cares about me. Someone forgets to call you. See, no one cares about me. It's taking that one difficult experience, this one event, this one mistake, and generalizing it to everyone in your life, generalizing it to everything that you do or have done. It goes to the extreme. It becomes unbalanced and distorted. So here we're once again going to be looking for exceptions. I always mess everything up. If you're saying this to yourself enough, you're going to believe it. You're suddenly going to have the reaction is you always mess everything up. You fail everything. Nothing is ever going to work for you. If these were in fact true and factual, feeling horrible or giving up would make sense. But the problem is just because we think it, just because it pops in our brain, doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And sometimes it can be very, very distorted. So even stepping back for a moment and just going, wait, is this true? Can I think of an exception? Well, I guess I don't mess everything up. I've done this really well, or I passed that class, or I did get an A in that, or whatever it is that you can see that kind of is evidence against that can start to balance it and make it more reasonable and give you a tool so you just don't have to just accept everything that pops in your brain like that. Next slide, please. And here we get to labeling. This is the tendency to make global statements about yourself or others based upon situation-specific behavior. So labeling, I mean, come on, labeling can be very useful, right? I mean, as we're learning things, as we're doing research and science, being able to put a label on something to understand it is an appropriate shortcut at times. Sometimes it can be really helpful. You go up in your kitchen and you have a bunch of different things, and when you see labels, you know what's in it. So this is something we're kind of use effectively at times, but when it's used in an unhelpful type of way in our life towards ourselves and others, too much in the negative bias, it can be problematic over time. Next slide, please. So labeling is assigning labels to ourselves and other people. And when it's unhelpful, it's when it's biased to the negative or to the extreme repeatedly. So some examples might be, because I fail a test, then the label is I'm a failure. Because there is a setback, I'm cursed or unlucky. Because I don't understand something at work or at school, see, the label is I'm stupid. Because someone broke up with me or wasn't into me romantically, I'm unlovable, I'm ugly. You know, when we put a label on ourselves that's very negative and we embrace that, how could we possibly feel any sort of sense of self-worth or self-esteem? You know, is this really going to help us reach our goals? Is it a useful label? And not only do we do this for ourselves, we can do it towards other people, which can be just as unhelpful. You know, just because someone does something one time doesn't mean we're going to just put this extreme label on them. You know, so finding a lot more of a balanced approach and being aware of labels when they're very negative and not really trying to incorporate it or just blatantly accept it can be very helpful. And so here we are again, weighing the evidence for or against the label. Is this label accurate 100% of the time? Is this helpful? Is this even like useful at all? Because no one calling themselves stupid, and I can say this, is that going to help them in their life? You know, and it doesn't mean we can't push ourselves to do better or take responsibility or see areas we can improve or not feel great about things when we do mess up or when we are rejected or hurt or there's a setback. We get to have our feelings. We can want to do better. We can take responsibility. But putting on a negative label usually doesn't help that. And a lot of times it can be very distorted and completely untrue. So next slide. So here it's just kind of going a little bit more into what you can do. So, you know, we've already gotten some examples and there are plenty of more. You can Google this and you're going to find a bunch on this. But now what? Okay, well, what we don't want you to do is to try to stop automatic thoughts from popping in your brain. I mean, it's just not going to be realistic. Feeling bad, they pop in there. That's not helpful. Our brains are always popping in things. And when we've been thinking negatively or a lot of negative things have been said to us or we've had a lot of setbacks and this happens, having compassion, this is part of being a human. You didn't ask for this necessarily. You might not even be aware of it. So don't be hard on yourself. Don't panic if you have these type of thoughts. Don't feel bad when they pop in there. Don't view it that it's all your fault or you're wired wrong or you're doing it wrong. This is just an understanding that this happens, but you don't have to be just a powerless victim to a thought that pops in your brain, you know, and just even beginning to have awareness of how thoughts impact our feelings and behaviors is already huge progress. You know, just starting to identify unhelpful thoughts, just notice them happening, notice that pattern. And you might especially notice this type of thing when you're feeling really down on yourself, or you're feeling more depressed or more anxious or more stressed or blocked. You can start to just pay attention. Well, what am I thinking? What am I saying to myself? What am I imagining or picturing? And if you start to notice a pattern with this, at least that awareness, you can start to be empowered to how you react, to what you do with it. And that is where your power comes in. So don't try to stop them from happening. Don't feel bad, but focus on how you can respond to what you can do a little bit differently. And this may not come naturally at first, and you're certainly not going to be able to do it every time. But even if you can slowly here and there do it, become more aware, challenge your balance a little bit more, your brain literally can start to get rewired. Your worldview and your perspective can begin to become more balanced. You can reframe things and see them in a different way. And over time, this will become more automatic. It will become more natural and more, you know, more just automatic to be a little more balanced. And, you know, I still work on this stuff. I mean, even therapists, we still get these thoughts and we still have to work on it. It's not something you just instantly master. This is just a tool to really be in your tool belt, so to speak. So once again, seeking balance. Are there other ways to look at it? Can you reframe it? Can you see it from another perspective? You know, are there exceptions? Are there other possibilities? Consciously trying to seek that balance and weigh it and step outside of it. And sometimes you can really sit down and write it out, and you can really do exercises about it, or just kind of push back and go, wait a second, this is helping me. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to let my brain go there. This isn't even balanced. I'm not putting myself through it. Any ways you can practice and start to become aware, it's really going to help. Not immediately, but sometimes it may take a little bit till you get there. So above all else, be compassionate. We're human beings. We have difficult challenges. We're all trying to do our best. You know, nothing in life works perfectly. I can say that. Nothing usually works perfectly, but we're works in progress, and we're usually doing our best. And be compassionate towards yourself. Try to be loving towards yourself and as compassionate towards yourself. And then you can also be more compassionate to others and more balanced and realistic towards others, which is just going to help everything in your life. So next slide, please. And this is just my contact information. So if you ever want to know anything more about our US Vets programs, of course, Outside the Wire, which we have mental health services, you have my email, you have my number, you can call me, I'll help you. The Veteran Crisis Line, we just give that out to everyone. I mean, this is just there. If you're ever going through a hard time, you need to talk. It's 24/7, it's confidential, specifically can really help veterans. And that's just, I think, good for all veterans to have in their phone, or to be aware to give to others if they're having a hard time. And so with that, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. And hopefully some of this information can help you in your life and be a tool that you can utilize.
Thank you so much, Julie. That was awesome. It's hard to follow that. You gave so much powerful information and so much insight to everyone today. I just really want to take a moment and say thank you for that. Here you can see the post-webinar survey. We would appreciate if you could take a few moments to complete our survey, because we value your feedback, and this data does help us improve our webinars. My counterpart, Jenna, was answering questions during this period of the webinar. And Jenna, were there any questions that came up that we can direct towards Lance or towards Julie?
Sorry about that, Sean. I had to unmute myself. Sorry about that. You know what? There wasn't too many questions. I am putting I know the QR code is up about the survey, but I'm putting the link in there too. And of the questions we had, there really wasn't too much. Somebody asked about if the resource book I put in the chat was the most recent edition, and it is currently right now. Hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have another edition, either almost in print or in print, that we'll be able to give out, and it'll be all over our website, and we'll, I'm sure announcements will be made that a new edition is coming out. So, and then somebody else asked about just having a resource and having some support avenues where you live. And I gave that person, since the person that asked is in San Diego, I gave them Lance's information that presented earlier. He's the link, but also there are CVSOs in your area too, and we can help you find your CVSOs. You can just call us on the last page of the PDF copy of the resource book, or on the back of your resource book if you have it in hand. There's an 800 number that you can call. I'll put it in the chat in a couple minutes, or it'll be on our very last slide, but it's an 800 number that when you call it, you basically get routed to our CalTAP team, and or one of the links, and someone will be able to answer all your questions about all the benefits that you can access, and we're more than happy to go over all that with you. So either via email or over the phone. So other than that, oh, looks like one other question came through. Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, other than that, I didn't get any other questions, so I will turn things back over to you, Sean.
Thank you. Just not to be the total nerd, but it is the 8th edition, is the newest version of the veteran resource book. So there are some upcoming webinars that we'd like to make sure you're aware of. College of the Canyons is in ourselves are sponsoring employment services, managing the challenges of substance abuse, handling stressors with resiliency, suicide prevention, and compensation and pension. Those are some of the upcoming webinars that we're going to have focused. And again, I want to make sure to put our contact information up here and leave it up for a bit, so that way you can copy it down or use your phone and take a screenshot. We are here to help answer questions and provide you with information about the services that are out there. So whatever we can do to make sure you get that information, we're happy to help. Again, I'd like to take a moment to thank Lance and to thank Julie, and of course, thank my counterpart, Janet, for being with the webinar today. Right now I have that it's 10:50. So it looks like I'll be able to give you 10 minutes of your day back. And I just want to thank everyone for their time. I'm going to leave this up for a little while longer, for another minute or two before we end the webinar. Thank you. And I hope that you have a great afternoon and a great week.